I want to start this lesson with the solve and share problem. That's an open problem for kids to solve in ways that make sense to them. That gives me lots of information about how they're thinking about the content that we're going to engage with when we get later on into the lesson. In planning for the solve and share, the first thing I always do is solve the problem. Or I'll sit down and try to solve that problem and try to think about the variety of ways that kids might solve that problem. I want to make sure that I consider lots of different strategies, models, or ways that they might solve it. So I sit down and kind of scratch some things out. One of my favorite components about the Teacher's Edition, particularly in the solve and share, is that I'm given guided questions before I start the lesson. And that helps me start to sort of think about, like, what are the good open-ended questions I'm going to ask to all students or students who are struggling to help keep them on track for where this problem needs to go. I think it's a true highlight. I think it's really helpful for me. For this problem, is there someone who'd be willing to read that problem to us out loud? Oh man, I love all these hands. Thank you very much. Giovanni, why don't you go ahead and read that for us?
There are 10 teams in a baseball league. Each team has 25 players. How many players are in the league? Solve this problem using any strategy you use.
Okay, right now everybody take a picture of that in your head. Get a vision of what that looks like. And then, Jayla, would you mind reading the problem again aloud to the class?
There are 10 teams in a baseball league. Each team has 25 players. How many players in the league are in the league? Solve this problem using any strategy you choose.
Great. So now I have a question for you. Can somebody, without looking at the paper, tell me what we need to know about this problem? Tell me this problem without reading it to me. I don't want you to read it to me again. Just tell me what's going on in this problem. All right, Mia, go ahead.
We need to find the total.
The total what?
The total of how many players are in the league.
How many players are in the whole league? Who can tell me what information we know from this problem? What do you know? Try not to look at it. Try and have the picture of this in your head. Yeah, Jacoby.
There are 10 teams.
There are 10 teams. What else do we know? What else do we know? Trenton?
There are 25 players on each team.
25 players on each team. Everybody got a picture of that in their head? Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to, right in that space in your book, solve this problem in any way that makes sense to you. And I want you to do this by yourself. So let's spend about 2 minutes on your own, and then I'm going to let you talk to your classmates about it, okay? So go ahead and solve this, and I'll come pop around and see what's going on. To me, the solve and share is non-negotiable. It has to start every day. However, I have to be very careful not to spend too long in the solve and share. It's really easy to get wrapped up in the way kids are solving problems. And I really just have to be intentional of sort of thinking about, all right, this is the first third of the lesson-ish. 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes max where I'm having kids engage with this problem. Why don't you guys go ahead and talk to your group mates about how you solved it, and let's listen to each other about how your classmates solved this problem. Go ahead and talk to each other about it. The opportunity to work with partners or small groups is so important for all of our students to have, because once I start talking to you about how I'm solving it, a lot of times I'll self-correct based on just sort of explaining what I'm doing, or probably more importantly, sometimes I'll see the work that you're doing and go, oh my goodness, that's such a more efficient way for me to think about this. That opportunity to both reflect upon the work that I'm doing and then learn from my classmates is so powerful for our students. So if I get these 2-3 different strategies, how do I want to share them? In what ways does it make sense for those 2 to 3 strategies to be shared with the class? Which of them are, lots of kids are going to use? Are there some of them that are going to be a little more unique? And I try to consider how I might present them to the class as we talk about the ways to solve it. So for me, after the students are done solving their problem in the solve and share, and they've had some time to reflect with their partners or groups about how others were thinking about it, I like to bring everybody back together as a whole group and to share selected student strategies as a way to lead us into what comes next with the visual learning bridge. So when I was watching the students solve the solve and share problem, I was looking intentionally for students who were using arrays, students who were using maybe repeated addition even, or maybe relying on multiples of 10. So I was intentionally looking for those sort of things. And when I saw the sort of 3 ways that we actually shared, those 3 seemed really clear to me in ways to connect these different models and how you see the same sort of multiplication problems when you're doing the partial products. You see them in all of those 3 variations. It's really laying the groundwork for what we're going to engage with in sort of that formal instruction phase during the visual learning bridge and then the independent practice. So now I have a question.